So good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Yesterday afternoon I made a video about fixing a taper on an output shaft. This is it here. It's part of a gearbox rebuild that I'm doing, and just fiddling around now getting the box ready to go back together, and sort of been thinking about this a lot in the last couple of weeks, and it's been kind of difficult with the coronavirus thing sweeping the world and what might happen to our economies. And funnily enough, we're very, very busy. And it goes back to mechanics and times and things that have happened in my life. I'm 65. And in the days when I was a kid, all the mechanics were wizards as far as I was concerned. And they did work in a particular way. A lot of them that I was interacting with were British people that had migrated here, and they were a particular kind of mechanic, and we had a lot of British cars on the roads back then. When I opened this shop, I didn't ever intend it to be a sausage machine. I used to own Bridgestone Tyre and Mechanical Centres. We had a big car yard in Brisbane that used to sell 300 cars a month, and we had 4 or 5 or 6 mechanics working for us, detailers, upholsterers, spray painters. And it was a sausage factory. My Bridgestone Tyre Centres were sausage factories. We got cars in, we serviced them quickly. Most of them were, run-of-the-mill cars. We carried stocks of brake pads and oil filters and air filters, and we did $149 services like they all do. And when I started this business back up in earnest, when I came back from the John Darien Wool Shed in 2016, I didn't want to do that. I had a little shed that I'd had for 15 years or so. It was 80 square metres, and I was quite happy to sit in there and just work away on my own on bikes, and people would come and visit me and one thing and another. And then I had to move. I moved here 2 years ago, which was what that was all about, the video. And I had to make a decision to retire at 65 or 66 and go away, or keep doing something that I love to do. And I'm a person who needs to do something. I could never sit around and drink coffee and play dominoes. It's just not my scene. So we decided that we would open a shop that 240 square metres odd, or whatever it is, much bigger. I'd have to drive some business in here. And we still wanted to continue doing work in the way that I like to do it, which is one piece at a time, friends with our customers, open communications, reasonable prices. And I mean, BMWs still cost like BMWs, but we don't charge the same labour rate as other people. There's a conscious reason for that, so that I got time to fiddle with things and fix things and get them the way I want them to be, rather than just sausage machine it like we did when we had car yards and tyre companies. So here you go. This is a gearbox. I do various levels of gearboxes. I mean, I do some of them to the full Monty. It takes me a couple of days, and they're special, and people who want those are prepared to pay the hours more. It's not any more time, not any more parts, I should say. But this is a gearbox that needs a bit more attention just because of the way things have worked out with it. So I thought I'd just show you. So this has been done up. It's got American sealed bearings in it, funnily enough, plus NTNs. So this is where the bearing goes on one end of the output shaft. This is where the bearing goes on the other end of the shaft, and that there is actually been roughened up a little bit to take the bearing, not smooth. These are rotating areas where gears rotate. These are sliding shafts where gears go along and up and down to engage and disengage gears. So I spend the time and I polish these rotating surfaces. This is the back of first gear cog. I polish the webs in here so that the dogs can slide more easily over them and engage. And I also polish the end of the dog. It slides on. Now, that doesn't mean I try to get it so that it's like a mirror or wear away any material. I just simply polish the surface on a linishing belt so that they can move easily across one another. They can slide across these webs and into gear, and then stay in gear. The shift levers that actually move them around, hang on a second, I'll just pause this. Now I haven't got to doing these yet, but you can see there, see the shiny mark on there? That's really all that touches if the forks are correct. This one's in pretty good nick. See, you can just see the very edge on one side, see there? And very edge on this side is barely touching at all. That's probably got a slight bend in it, that fork. Not enough to worry about, I'd say. But we polish these tips till they're gleaming. We polish these until they're gleaming. And we polish the inside until it's gleaming. We polish the rails that it runs on. This is a brass bush. These are sacrificial brass bushes that go into the first gear. So we polish them too, so that they're lovely and slick. And more importantly, where the dogs run, when the shift forks shift these gears, they're on splines and they run along these splines here, so they pull them backwards and forwards. I polish where the insides of those forks run. That means that the middle bit's shiny, but it doesn't actually really need to be. But where they pull and push the gear, there, that's what we try to shine up and polish and make sure that it's as smooth as it can be, so there's no drag. Does it take time? Yes, it takes time. Does it take effort? No, it doesn't take a lot of effort. It just takes time to make sure that this is all done properly. We leave the bearing where the bearings go clean, but not polished. We polish the things that go. This bush here, if ever you take it apart, it's held on both sides by a circlip and a spacer. You've got to be really, really careful, because the oil hole in it oils up with an oil hole drilled into the shaft. And it's on a spline, so it doesn't turn like the other bushes do. These other bushes spin, and they've got an oil well in them. See in the centre? This one doesn't. It's just got an oil groove, a distribution groove, and the oil pours out of that hole. There's only one hole in the shaft, so if you take that bush off and you don't put it back in the same place, you'll starve that gear for oil. These are all the little tricks that you find in these things. It's just like when people come into the shed and they say, oh, I did the carbies up the other day, and they put a needle valve in it, a float needle valve, and a set of O-rings, except for the throttle shaft O-ring, which is the most important one in the carburetor. They didn't do that because it's too hard to get out. And you know, they didn't bother to clean the thing properly, and they didn't replace the slide needles and the needle valves, needle jets, which are the things that wear. So they didn't do the carbies up, they just put new O-rings in them. It's the same with the gearbox. You can just put new bearings on it and that'll make it run okay, but that's not fettling the gearbox so it will give you the best that it has to give for the condition of everything inside it. And like everything else, they're all a sum of their parts. So even inside these things here, we polish up the insides of the gears that run on here. Anything that's designed to rotate in the shift cassette, and same, we do the same. All the rotating pins, we polish them, we deburr them so that there's nothing for them to drag against. And then we use non-synthetic oil. I use 90 weight in Australia because we have a warmer climate and it thins out a lot more in the heat. So I use 90 weight oil that sticks and clings to surfaces and runs around things and cushions things. And if it's got no resistance in the metal to overcome when things are sliding, and then you've got good quality oil helping them slide, 99 times out of 100 the gearbox will change noticeably, markedly better, particularly going into first gear at the lights. So there you go. That's just a reason. This shop is here because I enjoy the interaction with my customers. I only work on airheads because I only like airheads. I only ride airheads. It's not to say the others aren't great and wonderful and advantageous and full of technology and every other thing. They are, and they're beautiful to ride, but I like the mechanical feeling of riding an airhead. I enjoy it, and I enjoy working on them, and then I enjoy improving them and making them work better for the people that give me their bikes and trust me with their bikes to fix. Now it's about 11 o'clock, and at midday I'm going to close the doors today, and I'm taking my beautiful wife up the coast now that we can do it again after all these months, and we're going to spend the night and with some friends, and a day riding home. So ride safely and stay well until we meet again.